Today we're talking to Alex for the last time, and today we're talking about old men racing. And when we talk about old men racing, I'm talking about myself. Like, can me, 41-year-old Mike, can I get into racing? Is it something that I can do? And, you know, I challenge him to convince me to race. And he does a pretty good job. Anyways, I'm going to let him explain it. And I look forward to letting you watch it and hearing your feedback. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye. You know, one of the things that we talk a lot about on the show is how do you, as an FPV pilot, sustain yourself? Like the possibilities for making a living wage in this industry are, there's really not a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so a question I have for you, and I'll ask you point blank, and you can feel free to not answer, or you can feel free to answer, it's up to you. Is, are you able to make a living wage flying FPV? And if you are, is it because you bounce from, you know, circuit to circuit to circuit to circuit?
So last year, I'm going to say yes to the question. As for other people at DRL or other pilots, you know, as you know, you talk to everyone, probably not. Last year, it was circuit to circuit to circuit. This year, partially with the DRL contract, which I'll be honest, and it was never mind. That would have to get cut out anyway. This year with the DRL opportunity and some other sponsorship stuff and some other film stuff that I've been doing, which is still kind of bouncing around. You know, I'm doing the DRL thing and I'm doing some other film projects, but I'm not going to as many races as I did last year as I'm going to this year. I'm going to focus on DRL, multi-GP, and that's really it. Maybe do one international race coming up in Korea. And I'm not going to those really any of the multi-GP races or anything for money purposes. I'm lucky enough to have a great contract with DRL and then through some of these other sponsors where I can self-sustain myself. Now I'm also living at home, right, which is a big help. If I wasn't living at home, I've never lived by myself yet. I'm only 19. I could probably, from what I've talked to my mom about, I could probably self-sustain, but it wouldn't be like I had enough money to go to Disney World. You know, it'd be like an average person, I guess, or maybe a little bit better for my age. But I don't know. In drone racing, what I found, and that's partially why I'm focusing on the freestyle and these film projects like what Johnny's doing, is if you're going to make a living doing this, which this is not what I intend to do forever, maybe for the next few years, you have to branch outside. I don't think there's a ton of money in racing. There's decent money in the contracts that you can get and all that garbage. But unless you're like Nurk and you're making $125,000 because you won a championship, you know, it's through racing itself, it's pretty much impossible to make a living. I'm just going to say it there. Unless you did what I did last year, which I did very, very well last year. But that's because I literally went everywhere. I was lucky enough we won the DR1 season, which, you know, you can figure out the math, but it was $50,000 split three ways. So that's between three pilots. On top of that, I was also contracted by DR1 and then paid my time on top of that to be there. So that was a really good loan. Then I had the multi-GP championship. I went to Turkey and I took second place to Minchin and still won 10 grand. Like, I did pretty well last year. But it's one of those things. It's really hard you can self-sustain. I think there's only a few people though in this hobby who can, or at least who are racing or doing film stuff like Johnny, who can self-sustain and have like some insurance knowing that it's not just going to fade away overnight. Racing could just die overnight for many, many reasons. So that's why I don't necessarily rely on it right now. All I'm doing is making as much money as I can, saving it for in the future, and planning out my future outside of FPV as well. Because while I'd love to do it forever and everything, you never know. So it's still not mature enough to know where it's going to go yet.
That's a solid answer. Is school somewhere in that for you?
Yeah, so I just graduated last June, so it's almost been a year. In high school, I did a ton of APs and I did dual credit, so I got ahead pretty good. So as I stand right now, I will have basically caught up to where I was in college once this second semester or this summer hits. So if I decide to start doing school again, it would be in the fall and I'd be right back where I was. Otherwise, if I just gone straight to school, I could have been a year early, right? Which would have been great, but I wanted to focus on doing this year to solely focus on drone racing. And I've kind of rattled with going back to school this fall, but I think I'm going to probably take at least one more semester off, but do online classes and do them just locally, and start knocking out some of those basic creds, because I am trying to think ahead of my future. What I'm doing besides school, though, that's thinking of my future is I fly real airplanes. I know I mentioned that. I'm a licensed pilot. I'm working on my commercial license right now. I should have that done. My goal is before July 20th. That's when that big air show is, and it'll be my 10th anniversary flying RC airplanes too, which is cool. And I'm trying to get my commercial license done, because once that's done and I turn 21 and I have a certain amount of flying time, I can get hired by an airline. And the airlines are desperate for pilots, like desperate for pilots. With an associate's, not even with an associate's degree, but with an associate's degree or more, easily get hired on. I've already had airlines tell me, like, you get that commercial license in your 250 hours, they will hire you, they'll fund the rest of your training, and then bring you on. It's your paycheck every month, and then they're paying for your training on top of it. So that's kind of my backup route, getting that commercial, and then now I can have to focus on the drone racing and know that, all right, I got that fallback. And so doing that school, it's kind of like a juggle. It's kind of like I'm juggling a few things: drone racing, college, flying real airplanes. But I'm doing an okay job managing it. But I'm always trying to remind myself, and I have my parents who are great about that, reminding myself, think ahead of your future. What's going to happen to drone racing? You don't know. So plan ahead. And so that's what I do. So I know, I don't know. That's about it, I guess.
I would definitely encourage you that college is not a race. And that you could definitely put some time exploring other opportunities and doing other things, and then eventually go back to college if you needed to.
Absolutely.
But there's, I do know a lot of friends and a lot of people that have graduated with, pretty crushing debt from college, and they don't have degrees that are as worth as much as they thought they would be. So.
Right.
Which is not to say that you shouldn't necessarily pursue a degree, but anyways, that's just an old man talking,
right.
Later on down the line.
Great. That's great.
So speaking of old men, is there room for old men racing? I mean, it seems like it's a young man's sport.
But 2 years ago when I won nationals, I would have probably said yes. Now I look at this. I'm gonna answer this question with some facts. In 2017, I was one of maybe 3 people, McGapp and Evan Turner, heads up FPV, in the top 16 pilots at nationals who were under the age of 18. And now at this last nationals, I was one of 3 people who were above 18 in the top 16 at nationals. And in the top 6 pilots, top 6 or 7, I was the only one over 18. In the final, I was the only one. I was 4 years older than the next pilot in that final at nationals. 4 years older. I still like to. I know I like to.
You were ancient.
But I like to think I'm an adult, but I also recognize I'm still a kid. I like feeling like a kid in that sense, right? But it's like, right? I feel like I'm ancient. And you go to Korea. In Korea, it is. You hit 24 and you're done in Korea. Like, they don't even know. I lived in Korea for 3 months. I didn't see a single person over the age of 24, 25 racing. Like, actually, they did have, it was cool though. They had a senior league. They did have people over the age of 25 and everything racing, but it was funny. They had 2 classes. It was basically, it was like junior class, which was under 18, which is basically all the fastest. That was like the one to watch. Then you had like 18 to 24, and that's people like Young Rock and some of the other guys. They were very fast as well, but not like insane. And then you have the over 24, which is a lot of the dads basically of these kids racing. Yeah. But it was good. And the competition gap was not as big as you think it would be. Like, I mean, yeah, Min-Chan versus a 40-year-old, it's not even, Min-Chan would be lapping a guy. But, it's different. I think right now, as far as a place for old men or older people, it's one of those things. Look at Sean Taylor. Sean Taylor is still, in my opinion, one of the top pilots in the USA. He can beat me any day. He can beat Evan any day. People just don't recognize it. He's almost 40 years old. I'm sorry, Sean, if I'm 40 old, but he's almost 40 years old. He's got a kid now, and he does a good job. I think it's easier for kids is the answer. It's easier for kids. I think the reflexes are there. But 2 years ago, there were the same kids like Dolma, Evan were all racing. But they weren't on top because there was that maturity of racing, like the consistency, the building your quads and everything like that. And now it's changing where it's just kind of turning into raw speed. And I think some of these kids just, there's no fear. Evan shows up to nationals with 10 quads. Dolma shows up with his dad to fix all of his quads. In Korea, I'm there sitting with Minchan in a field practicing, and when Minchan crashes in practice, his dad goes and gets his quad. It's like a simulator. it's like, to be fair to Minchan, his dad then yells at him, and that alone is probably, not worth. It's probably worse than having to go and get your quad. But the reality is, it's like Minchan goes to school. I'm staying there with his dad in his house, and his dad's fixing 7 quads that Minchan broke the day before. And then, but then Minchan posts this. That's another thing I just want to note really quick too, because I've had a few people ask me. Minchan, some days he goes out there like anyone else, makes an amazing video, doesn't break a single quad, and then other days he goes out there. I watched him break about 7 quads in 1 hour, like 1 hour, like that's no exaggeration. One sunset he broke 7 back to back, but then he posted an amazing DVR run of it. It was like, even he admitted to me, he's like, yeah, that was like, I'm sitting in his room watching him like go through his DVR, like, have to find best DVR clip to post. He's like, but that's what makes him so much faster. That's what makes, I think, kids have advantages. I don't really know many kids who personally, like, I had to go work in a hobby shop to fund my hobby, like not just drones, like to fund real flying, to fund RC airplanes. I know a lot of kids, not pointing fingers or names, who I'm sure they earn it in some way, shape, or form, but I do know other kids who they're good kids, but they don't put a single dime into it. They literally fly, and that's why they're so good and get so good so fast. Because it's a simulator. Hit reset, next quad, go. And I don't know. I think that's what makes a disadvantage for older people is, and I think it can get you a certain distance in races, like, getting into that final, for example. But then when you're up against someone like Evan or even someone like me or Minchan, it's like you got to have that speed. And if you don't have that speed, regardless of how many quads your dad fixes or you built, doesn't matter. I think it goes a certain distance. I think if it was spec racing, like I would love to see multi-GP do a class where it's like, I'm not going to get specific about it, but like 1800 kV on 4S, right? You have to you can't be over a certain kV. Who cares about the motor? No one's going to give that much of a crap, right? Like no more than 1800 kV. That lets everyone with their 6S setups fly, and you have to race 4S because everyone's got junk 4S batteries laying around, and it's slow and it's fun racing. Like I've raced local guys who I can gap by 13 seconds at a local race, flying my quad, and we race the 4S, and it's only a 4-second gap, right? Mm-hmm. It's closer. It's all about the line. You see other pilots who all of a sudden never shined before start to shine because they know how to race, right? I don't know. I don't think the over 40 or like the can old people race is the right question. I think it's how should we change racing to make it more applicable to everyone and not just be a sprint race. That part of that's the format and part of that is the rules behind it. And I think there needs to be different classes and there needs to be a certain group of people determining those classes, and the community needs to not get butthurt when it's like, oh, I don't want to race 1800 kV for us. That sounds slow. Well, okay, you don't have to. Just don't do it. So, I don't know. I do this for fun and do it for the competition. Any way to make those two things bigger and better, I'm all about it.
Yeah, that's I think a spec race would be interesting. My last question for you is convince me to race. It's a statement. It's a statement.
So
it's convince me to race.
So have you tried racing before?
So I have 2 multi-GP points.
Hold on, yeah, it's.
All right, dude. Hold on. Did I lose you? Are we back?
Yeah. All right, you're back now.
Okay,
you're good.
All right. So I have 2 multi-GP points. Now this was, keep in mind, this was like almost 3 years ago. I cleared 2 laps on this massive course that we had just down the road, and there's actually a pretty active race scene out here. And the guys that fly out here, they fly weekly races, but it's just super hard for me to find the time and motivation to get out there and actually race. So I would love to hear you tell me why I should race.
I think you should race. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to be a better pilot?
Yes.
Okay. I tell this to freestyle pilots and I tell this to race pilots. I tell racers, you should branch out into freestyle. Like Evan. I'm like, Evan, if you branched out into freestyle, I don't want you to because it'll make you a god at flying if you can like learn the ability. It's like, well, why would I need a freestyle? I'm like, because it's going to make you smoother. When you go home and do your footage and you're like, why is it so shaky? You're going to be like, you know, why? And you're going to fly smoother. To freestyle pilots who maybe aren't as comfortable hitting tight gaps or doing fast maneuvers, well, I'm more of a cinematic, juicy type pilot. So very rarely do I ever hit full stick, but I do. And part of the reason I'm so much more comfortable at some low to the ground and high speed and through trees and everything is because I race through gates at like 80 miles an hour, right? But besides all the specifics, branching out will only make you a better pilot. Getting that exposure, flying different types of quads, it's like me. It's like, look at Evan. I know I've talked about him and Minchin a lot, but like Evans, if you can see photos on Evan's Facebook from when he was like 3 years old flying a tricopter or like an RC airplane, like he's been on flight tests when he was like 8, right? Any type of extra hands-on RC experience, whether it's you're a freestyle guy and you're not sure how you can improve your skills, go try racing. It's not going to hurt you. You might break a quad doing it. Okay, big deal. Okay, this hobby is a lot cheaper than other hobbies that I've done, even in RC. No big deal. It's going to make your flying way better. You should get, and it's also good because you get to, for me, I also love racing because I love showing up to big races and just going out to dinner with someone, like a bunch of people who I know throughout the internet and the country, and just hanging out with people. Like at the 12-hour Mayhem race, I wasn't sitting with my team for 12 hours. Most of the time I was, but the other time you're just socializing. You're chatting it up with pilots. And I think when you freestyle, you have a little group of people, and that's basically it, if even that. So go out to races.
I freestyle with me, and if
right?
I'm not freestyling with me, then I'm playing spotter for my boys.
One of your kids, right? I mean, I'll say this: I live on an airport where it is 10 minutes to town, it is 45 minutes to the local race that I can go to, and very rarely do I actually fly models or anything with anyone. Except I still fly model airplanes actually with a bunch of older guys, which is cool. Actually here on the airport, and that's like one of the most fun things I look forward to, more than going to local races, to be honest. And it's nothing against the people at my races or anything like that. It's just I love being around other people and like sharing a hobby that we love. And I think that's one thing that racing does. And I think freestyle done it too. Like we had the Rotor at Rampage, which was amazing. I didn't hear anyone really talk bad about Rampage. I only flew one battery at Rampage, one battery over 2 days, like actually at the event. Is because I just had so much fun hanging out with everyone else. That was a blast. I think that's what racing does that freestyle generally doesn't do. So go out there, socialize with everyone, and then make your abilities better. You might find a knack for racing. If not, that's fine. I know local guys who are freestyle guys who they come out to the races and they're like, oh, why am I doing this? I'm just breaking quads or something like that. I'm like, well, do you feel like you're getting any better? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, keep going. You'll see. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But it's you're exposing yourself. Whether you know it or not, you're increasing your abilities on the sticks. That's something I also recommend to drone pilots. I only know about 3 people I can count on one hand in this entire hobby I've met who can fly line of sight. Like, and I don't mean like hover and do like a quick. I mean like fly line of sight. Like,
oh, it's so yeah.
Drop the quad at them. Like do like a turn. Like I really don't know people. I know Shannon can do it, and that's actually the only person I know who can really. Oh, I know Jeff Orta, Vortex on Rotor Right. He can line of sight. Those 2 guys, including myself, came from airplanes and helicopters. And I think people don't realize that even when you're flying under the goggles, like you don't really learn that coordination with roll and yaw like you do when you fly line of sight.
I can add a 4th guy to your list, but you've never met him.
Who's that?
There's a local guy named Andrew Wong.
Okay.
And I don't even know if he still flies. But he, at every race that I ever saw him at, or every event, or every place that I saw him fly, he would always, at the very end, take one pack and fly line of sight. And he would always fly it in reverse orientation.
Right.
So he would fly it with himself, and he'd do TikToks and all these other crazy things, and it'd just be like, wow, what? Dude, how do you like? I don't think I could do that faced away from me, but how do you like? Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
so, and he was a good pilot.
Right. That's a good mix too, and like you're good at both. But I know, branch out into racing, try it. I think part of the thing I ask people if they want to get into racing is if you like competition and you like going fast, definitely do it. If not, you should still try it because it's going to only help your abilities. But that's kind of a question you have to ask yourself. Drew LeDrib, he could be a phenomenal race pilot, but he just doesn't care for racing. He just like, I don't know. But I've watched him when I'm in Orlando, just setting up like, here, Drew, fly my race car around these trees. And I'll tell you this, if Drew actually put the time in, he could easily make the top 8 at Nationals. And I'm speaking of Lidrib, Drew Kent. I'm not joking when I say he can make the top 8 at Nationals. Like, that is no joke. He just doesn't care about, he doesn't care for competition. Same with Smith. Steele's a better example. Steele used to be the fastest pilot in the nation in 2015. The fastest. Got unlucky at the first Nationals because of like a midair or whatever. So Chad Nowak won. He was the fastest. And he literally like would go out to local races, destroy everybody. Like well-known top pilots these days, destroy them all. And he just quit. He's like, I don't really want to race. Just didn't care for it. So, I mean, you got to have a little bit of will. Like if you don't want to do it, then, stay at home. But if you have a little bit of an urge to do it, go out and do it and see if that urge turns into something bigger.
All right. Well, maybe I'll have to give it a shot then. I may fly my freestyle rig the first time, but I
have a race tomorrow, and I'm a little bit low on some quads on race
go
parts.
do it, man. Yeah, we're done.
Do a Super G. 7-inch Super G. So up the camera tilt on the old girl, it'll buff.
Yeah, baby. Awesome. Thank you, Vanover. Thank you very much. This has been spectacular. This was just a great time. I really appreciate everything. Is there anything else that you'd like to say? Where can people find you? Where should they look for you?
Yeah, so my handle is Vanover, Captain Vanover. You can find me on YouTube by the name Captain Vanover, Facebook, Instagram. Go follow me on there. For like any of the gear or any questions that you have, you can always reach out to me. I try and respond to every one of them. And and keep up to date with like when maybe new frame or motor or something's coming out. And appreciate it greatly. And that's about it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's another one. And we'll see you soon. Talk to you guys later. Bye. So there you have it. It was honestly a true pleasure having Vanover on the show. He is truly one of the most exciting guests that I think I've had, partially because he is so young. He does not carry himself like he's 19 years old. I wish that I had the determination and the drive that he has when I was 19 years old. It would probably have changed and shaped my life in many different ways. I wish Alex the absolute best going forward. I will be watching this year's DRL. I want to see what happens when he races in all of the places that he's going to race. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be rooting for him. You know what? I like Nurk. I like Jet. I want to have both of those guys on the show. I want to see all these other guys do really well. But Alex, I'm pulling for you, buddy. And I hope that everybody else does too. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.